So, Duane, this is the second time on, because obviously we love this subject. We had a great first podcast. Let's just remind the listeners, what you do, where you're from, a little bit of your background, and I think what we kind of chatted, we want to jump into profit, and I think this is going to help. This episode is really going to help not just remodeling business owners, but just business owners in general, and how important this is. And I think we're going to really have a good time on this one, because I've really been through both sides of it and more of the downside of it, and we can really discuss why.
Right. No, and I totally agree. And my background does go into the whole profit thing. I ran my own business for years, and I've worked with other builders. And so I've got to see their operations. But my entire career has been in the construction industry,
Mm-hmm.
both in remodeling. I've done new homes. I've done the big estates. I've seen most aspects of residential construction. I've even done a little bit of commercial in my early days. And I struggled all along the way with learning how to run a business. We were just chatting. I love remodeling. I love that part of the business. But the business side took me 20 years.
Yeah.
20 years before I really started to understand what in the world I was supposed to be doing. And a lot of that was understanding the profitability. And my first run at remodeling, you got one of those going. Mine's on silent. It'll just sit there.
Have it on silent.
Mine's on vibrate only.
Yeah.
So my first run at remodeling failed.
Yeah.
I made it the requisite.
Or you learned a lot.
I learned a lot.
Yeah. There's no failures in life.
There's no failures. Well, as I saw the other day, which I thought was a great line. You're not drowning. You're learning to swim.
Right. Yes.
In my case, I drowned because I didn't learn how to swim before I went under.
Right.
But what a lesson. And things about profitability, I didn't know how much to charge.
Mm-hmm.
So, they said, oh, you've got to charge 25% markup.
Yeah, because that's what the insurance company has, 20% on their, markup. Yeah.
Okay, then that's what I charge. That was the entire basis of my estimating.
Right.
25%. Had no reasoning behind it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And again, one of my biggest mistakes. And I listen to people and they say, you're not charging enough, you should be charging 50%. And I was like, there's just no way on this planet.
Right.
Now, I was coming out of the commercial world. We were talking 15%, 10 and 5, maybe 10 and 10. And I'm looking at 25% markup, maybe even thinking about 30, going, that's just crazy.
Right.
Crazy talk.
Right.
Crazy talk money. Like nobody's going to be talking about those kind of numbers. And so I thought 25 is reasonable, must be reasonable. So I ran with it with no understanding of my numbers. Now, I had all my accounts lined up. I had a beautiful set of books. Didn't know how to read them, didn't understand them. And eventually I, literally ran out of money. They say, lack of money is the reason most businesses fail.
Yeah.
I disagree with that statement. They run out of money.
Right.
There's plenty of work out there. There's plenty of money out there.
Mm-hmm.
If you need to borrow money, you can borrow money.
Yep.
I borrowed money
Yep.
to make payroll almost
Yep.
every week until I ran out of resources.
Yep.
And just went under.
Yeah.
So this topic of profitability is near and dear to my heart. Once I figured it out and really studied the numbers, it was like a light bulb.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of why I do what I do now. I've got experience in the industry.
Right.
I know the struggles. I have been on the worst side of it.
Mm-hmm.
I've also been on the best side of it. I've had very successful jobs. I've had a very successful company.
Yep.
And life brought me to the point where I said, let me see what I can do to be a champion for the remodeling industry, to help other builders, help other remodelers. One, not spend the 20 years to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if we can do this in the 5 before they go under.
Right.
So that's why I'm focused on this. And that's part of the reason, I really want everybody to understand their numbers and understand profit's not a bad word.
Yeah. I think I love it, where your life path is probably the real meaning of it is now to help. And you have to kind of go through it to really understand, to be able to help. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's I champion that as more of a success in the grand scheme of things, because you have to go.
Oh, it's
through
painful while you're
it's
going.
It's very
though.
painful.
Oh,
but then you can't relate unless you've been through it. You can't sit down and say, hey, this is the reasons why this is important. So I mean, profit, it's negative in the news. Oh, this company made X amount of millions and billions, and people look, oh, Wall Street did this, Wall Street did that. And I think, there is when you're working for yourself, you sometimes just want some money.
Right.
And how of a bad thing that can be. And you go in front, and what people don't ever understand is that every day you go and you talk to somebody about a job, and a lot of people will sit there and try to be like, well, I don't think I should, this should cost this, and I want to go and get my own materials. And the next thing you know it, you have not stayed firm because you're nervous about making your mortgage payment or paying your guys. And you end up saying yes, and that's the worst thing you could ever do.
Right.
So,
which is also the reverse effect of not having any profit.
Right.
If your past jobs are profitable, you've got reserves in the bank.
Right.
You're not chasing that job.
Right. Exactly.
So you're not going to say yes to the wrong work, and you're not going to be, what we always worry about, the mortgage payment or what could happen. You've got an operation here. It's got to be paid for. Right. So it never leaves the back of your mind.
Right.
But if you've made a profit, if you've got reserves in the bank, you can go, well, there's another job coming.
Exactly.
It's okay.
Yep.
But if you're running so tight, it's like a never-ending downward spiral.
Mm-hmm.
I have no reserves. I have no profits on the past jobs. I mean, I have enough to stay ahead of the mortgage.
Right.
But now I need the work.
And then you
dive after it.
And if you're not making profit, you're taking the deposits of the new projects to pay for the old ones that are losing money, or just to pay for payroll. And you're in this constant, stress, waking up sweating at night, and
not waking up because you never went to sleep.
Right.
You just toss and turn. I've been through those nights.
Yeah.
It's painful.
Yeah. So let's, somebody starting out, what is the first thing you do to talk about, because you have markup and then you have margin. What is the first step? Because I think a lot of this is to structure yourself so that you're not looking at a job and saying, well, let's do it, be around here. It should be kind of like a set price book that you're saying, hey, this is the cost of what's going to cost for the project. I need to mark it up X amount of dollars. And then for my company overhead, a salary for myself, and then I need to mark up a profit.
Right.
So I think when people structure that, then it's easy to say no if the client is not willing to pay, because I can't go any lower than this.
Right. Well, that's the biggest thing in negotiation. I mean, we put a 50% markup on it, and they're like, oh, I can cut 10% off that. What's 10%?
Right.
10% was all of your money you were going to make on the job.
Yeah.
Everything. You just went break even.
Right.
Because you were going to, because you thought, oh, I went from 50 to 40. Okay, well, what's, I can help the guy out. I tell guys now, don't help rich people.
Right.
Don't help, these guys are multimillionaires.
Yeah.
And you're pitching in. You're not moving into the house.
Right.
You never get to enjoy the patio or the family room or the new house in general.
Right.
You'll be lucky if they ever invite you back.
Yeah.
And the only reason you're coming back is because something broke.
Right.
It's not your house. Don't invest in it. You need to focus after yourself.
So let's follow where you just went with something broke, warranty items. Where is that money coming from, guys?
Right.
Unless you've built a markup that's going to cover all of your warranty work, your time, the materials, all of that stuff. Where does that come out of?
Right. And that's the whole part of understanding all of your numbers.
Right.
I mean, when I was first starting out, I had a concrete sub. Young guy, great guy, very gregarious, just couldn't stop talking.
Yep.
And he said something that I kind of always knew, but I always thought was interesting. But he was like, estimating's easy. Third for labor, third for material, third for me.
Right.
And even at that point, I went, a third for me, that's just greedy.
Right.
I mean, third for material, third for labor, third for me.
Yep.
That just sounds like nuts. And even if you understand that concept, even if you flow with that number, what a lot of guys do is go, a third is 33%. Okay, I'll mark up 33%.
Right.
But a third for me is a 50% markup. So if there's $90, or let's say $50 in material, $50 in labor, and $50 for you, you've got $100 in cost. If you mark that up 50% or $50, that's your third. So just understanding that one third is a 50% markup is the first major step in understanding your numbers. I didn't get it when he said it on the job site that day. And it would take me years, and I know math, I'm good at math, to really sit down and understand just that simple concept of markup and margin, why they're not the same thing. But we're measuring off of income, total income. That total income includes that markup.
Right.
So everything we're measuring goes all the way to the top line number.
Right.
We never say, oh, my overhead is a percentage of my cost of work. We don't measure that way.
Right.
How much did you make this year? Like, that's the number. Yeah. That's the focus. That's the top line number.
What was left in your bank account, at the end of the year is really the reality. And I think with saying that too is making, a big step for what guys don't do is a separate account for deposits. Because, we take on big deposits for projects because, there could be, $30 or $40 or $50,000 worth of cabinets that need to go into production before we even start.
Right.
So, or $100,000 worth of windows or, all of that stuff that has to go into production. So you can be like one week you're plus $500,000 in the account, and the next week you're minus 5,000. And it's just because you've collected the deposits, and you're making decisions based off of your bank account.
Right.
And that's a huge no-go because you just went and bought 5 more new trucks because you're high, but you don't realize that is for work that hasn't been done yet.
Right.
So it's your numbers. You really have to go in and make sure you're if it is that 50%, if that's what you decide. And I think that the 50% really needs to be, what is the cost of your overhead to run the company?
Right. What
is your when we break down your cost to run the company, you have to, there's a lot of ancillary. And I'll tell you, I learned all this the hard way. There's so much stuff that is not a direct part of your gross profit. There is, so that's, or your cost of goods sold, right?
Right.
So you have you're going to have your cost of goods sold is basically what did it cost the project, what was the materials and what was the labor, right?
Right.
And then maybe, whatever went into that, project management, but then you have all of the other things that people are not, what is that? What does all that stuff cost?
Right. Right. And to answer your first question, you were like, well, what do I tell guys in the very beginning? Well, one, I want you to know your numbers, but we don't know our numbers the first year.
Right. Yeah.
It may be even the second year, because our first year is usually some twisted set of numbers of us still wearing a tool belt.
Right.
So where do I put my time? Is that job cost? Or I'm the owner of my company. That's part of my overhead.
Right.
Well, now your job costs are running low because you spent all your time as a free carpenter.
Yeah.
Somewhere in this system, you're working for free, most likely in the first few years.
Right.
You don't know your numbers.
Right.
And there's really, unless you kind of run a separate set of books, there's really no way to track all this stuff.
If you're working in your business, you should be compensated for the exact tasks that you're doing to a market rate. So if you're working as a project manager, you need to pay yourself as a project management salary or for the hours. So you should almost clock in like your guys are clocking in. You need to clock in and say, okay, I did project management over at this project for 8 hours. I need to then be compensated.
Right.
And I don't care if you're already making a couple $100,000. You need to be compensated because it will then show you the real cost for when you move out of that role and put somebody in that role. The real cost.
Right.
Because you don't know it if you're sitting there, with
Right.
all the hats on.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, I got to hire this person. And,
Yeah, and it gets tricky because, okay, so you're doing estimating at 9 o'clock at night.
Right.
How and where do you book that?
Right.
You're not really ready yet to be booking all those numbers. How do you get that number? And that's why I tell guys, okay, look, if you're early on, you don't know your numbers, assume that your overhead's 20%.
Right.
Just
that's a good.
You got to start somewhere. I've talked to guys that'll run 28%. Talk to guys that'll run down, tight at 16. Like, okay, just use 20%.
Yeah.
But then at 20%, it's kind of an eye opener when you're talking about the 50% markup and you're actually making 33. Now, again, that's 20% of your total income.
Right.
That's why we're measuring everything against that top line number.
Right.
Which includes your profits.
Right.
And that's why these percentages all kind of start mixing up in your head. Everything goes back to that top line number, and you want to know that margin, that gross profit,
right,
at 33%. And I'll use these numbers because they're pretty straight in my head. They're pretty fast numbers for me. So if you've got 33% and you've got 20% overhead,
right,
you're down to 13%. Now, I always look at remodeling, construction in general, to have 3% slippage on a job. Okay, that isn't hard at all.
You're doing pretty good.
Right.
You're doing pretty good if it's only 3%.
Right. So if you've got 3, now you're down to 10%. You're down to 10% profit margin. And
that's everything has to go perfectly.
Right.
Perfectly.
Like everything was good. You got paid for all your change orders.
You didn't have a project manager walk off the job, a subcontractor do it all completely wrong. You didn't have, the material price to shoot up through COVID that it went up to $100 a sheet.
Right.
All of the things have to go perfectly to get that 10%. But all of a sudden now it's 2% because everything went wrong. The
Right.
cabinets came in wrong. Yeah.
And then Uncle Sam has his hand out.
Right.
So there another 30% went away again.
Right.
You're like, okay, I worked hard all year. Where'd all my money go?
Right. You owe money.
You
owe money because what you weren't paying attention is you racked up all of your suppliers. They're all running stuff. So you saw on your bank, well, I'm watching. I got $100,000 in the bank, but I owe the suppliers $300,000, and you're not paying attention, and you're not hire a good bookkeeper. First thing,
I totally agree.
You have to, and somebody that knows how to do it and I think we had this conversation in the last podcast was, do not hire a bookkeeper that doesn't know what they're doing because you don't need to learn along with them.
Right.
They need to say, Dave, Duane, listen, I need this from you now. You need to have somebody that is like, hey, do you know you have to do this, this, and this?
Right.
Because you don't know, and you're trying to get that stuff built.
Now, the other piece of that, which took me a while to learn too, and I've heard it, didn't really get it, is there's a difference between construction accounting and other accounting.
Right.
I was like, accounting's accounting. I've been running accounting most of my career. I've run my own business. Like I said, I did my own books. Accounting is accounting, but I only know construction accounting. I don't have anything else to compare it against.
Right.
And what I did understand is one thing that we do differently than, say, a retail shop or even a restaurant, we're job costing.
Yes.
We're measuring everything against the profitability of job. We don't have inventory. We don't have SKUs.
Right.
We're not taking things out of stock. We're not just marking up stock. Oh, I bought the TV for $100 and I'm going to sell it for $300.
Right.
We don't have those kind of elements to play with. We're measuring job cost. That's construction accounting, which is why it's different than a bookkeeper who only understands inventory and pulling it out of inventory and marking it up. We're not running SKUs on anything. We don't have any scanners.
It is so much more complicated, and the bookkeeper needs to be done more in real time. So if you hire a bookkeeping company and you don't have good software and they're going to reconcile your books every month. Well, you've closed out 3 projects 2 weeks into it, and you don't know that those 3 projects are way over budget. You had then just gone and sold 2 more projects with the wrong markups.
With the wrong markups.
So the big difference in that is absolutely right. Job costing is so important. So what that means is everything that happens on that job needs to be costed to the project. So then you can look at the project and say, I took in 100,000 and oh shit, it cost me 120, and hopefully you see that in real time,
right.
or you can project that, hey, you know what, to finish this job, it's going to cost me 20 grand out of pocket, but at least you know about that. And then you can maybe say, okay, I don't know what just happened, but we need to stop and we need to figure out, the customer, chose something different that ended up leading into a, more additional labor, more, material, and nobody caught that. And maybe you go back after a change order. At that point, it's too late. But
it's too late, but it's
now
what
you've learned.
You've learned, but it's also worth a shot.
Right, exactly.
You go back to the client, hat in hand. If they say no, you were no.
Right.
If you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Yeah.
So in some cases you ask.
Yeah.
You're like, what's your worst case scenario? They said no.
Right.
You assumed it was a no before you put pen to paper.
Right.
So go after it.
And now you know, and now you're going to work your numbers and make sure you're already ahead of it. And what we like to do is buy out the project. So what is this job? Sit down with all your subcontractors. If you've got labor, your staffing labor, get some commitment. Hey, this is going to take a week, right?
Right.
Here's the material cost. Here's the other labor costs. Okay, looks like we're going to be okay. We got a couple buffer. And then start the job. If you walk in and no one will commit to your budget, don't do it.
Right.
Because if you do 10 of those, you're out of business.
Right.
It's so important.
And that goes back to understanding all of your numbers. Yeah. Eventually, as you start doing your accounting, you start recording all of this stuff.
Right.
You now have historical data.
Right.
Sometimes it's hysterical.
Yeah.
But
most of the time it's very hysterical. You're like, oh my God.
Right. You're like, really? That's what it cost me?
Yeah. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was going to be a lot more fun than it is.
Yeah.
And hysteria is about the only thing you got left at that point.
Yeah.
But you've got historical data.
Right.
You can now begin to look back. You'll see patterns forming.
Yeah.
If you're recording all of this. And that's why I had mine down to, I sat with my project managers every Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And we went over the job profitability every Thursday.
Right.
Now, again, we're on a week to week at this point.
Right.
They went up, they went down. But at least I could ask the question, why are we making a 200% profit on this job?
Right.
Owner just mailed in the deposit on the cabinetry.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now I know.
Yeah.
Or why is it the reverse?
Right.
Bill's going out to the client on Friday. Okay, I know the bill's going out. We shouldn't be in arrears. Let's straighten that out. I don't want to be here again.
Yeah.
But I know on a weekly basis where every job stands.
Right.
And it's not that hard.
And that goes back to the accounting too. So you have this job costing, but then you have another big part of the accounting is work in progress. So that is what part of, where are you in the project? And you're going to be on, like you just said, on either side of it. So it's not going to be always accurate. It's going to be either you've collected money for work that hasn't been done yet, or you've done work that you haven't collected yet for.
Right.
And as the reality is, what you really want to do is you always want to collect and then do the work. You always want to be in front or behind the client for they need to prepay for the work. But sometimes that doesn't exactly align all the time, and and
it really only even gets close to alignment if you're doing a percentage complete on your billing. But if you're doing milestones, it does start to get a little skewed. Even if you front load your milestones, it can happen.
Yeah.
You had to put out the plumbing deposit, but you don't get another draw until you start drywall.
So what is your expert? What is your opinion on milestones versus percentage?
I think a lot of it has to do with the size of the job.
Yeah.
Smaller jobs, I really don't have a problem with milestones. They're easy for the owner to understand. If you're only going to send them 3 bills, you start sending them a percentage complete, you lost them.
Right.
Do they understand? I get another 30% at closing inspection.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here are the inspection reports.
Yep.
I get a check. Okay, they understand that.
Right.
It's very clear.
Yep.
But if this is a 3-year job, it's not a milestone project. Your cash flow will be all screwed up, and it needs to be done on a percentage complete basis. Right. It just makes more sense. So a lot of it has to do with the size of the job. You have to make that determination up front, what works for you. In any case, you're not a bank.
Right. And understand that. You don't need to be. And you know, lines of credit and all that stuff is good, you know, to be able to cushion it. But that that's additional cost of interest on your overhead that you're probably not factoring. You know, the percentage we've moved to percentage is because the problem with some of the times with milestones is that if you're waiting for the specific milestone, you still have to start pre-buying the next portion of the job.
Which is what I was saying. You might be putting in a plumbing deposit or buying fixtures while you're waiting on the inspector to show up on the
So if you have like a rough inspection, and then but at that point you already have to start putting in all your deposits for your cabinetry and all. You know, might have to put deposits.
You're doing siding outside. You're putting the roof on.
All of that stuff. And the client said, "Well, you didn't pass inspections yet, and you might be waiting on $60,000 or $80,000. You don't have the money then prepay some of the stuff." And then it's very
over a little bit of fire stopping.
Yeah, exactly, because that's exactly what it's for.
Right, you missed
the inspection comes in.
Right, you missed a nail plate.
Yeah, no nail plate. I'll see you in 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Right. Yeah,
can I send you a picture? I can't send you. You're like, you got to be kidding.
Right. I carried nail plates and fire stop with me in the truck for inspections. It was like, no, I'm getting a sign off today.
Right. Yeah.
I had a gambit of tools, and it was like, no, you point to it, I'm fixing it while you're standing there. Like this is not happening. Yeah. But it does happen. Yeah. And it's usually over something silly. You missed a joist hanger. You didn't get all, your laborer missed putting a Tico nail in every hanger hole.
And now, right. Or that's not a number. You put in a couple number 8s there, and it should have been number 10s.
Right.
Because you ran out. You had whatever's in here.
Right. Or they were laying in the bottom of the pouch, and you just grabbed them.
Yeah, and you didn't even realize it. So the key thing is that as a business owner, you have to have all these hats on, but your expertise is usually in the production or the actual remodeling. And for them to add all of this money, stress is why guys stop.
Right.
And then why it's 90% of why there's problems on the job sites too. Because it's too much. Because now you're fighting the client for you just to keep your business running.
Right.
And they're, back and forth. And, well, you didn't get the inspection. We're not paying, and you're just like, yeah, but everything is done here. And we need to be able to pay our guys if we want to keep going. I think it's really a relationship with money that I think people, if you're going to be in a small business, you got to be okay with it.
Yeah. That's a really good point, too, is having a relationship with money. It is something as a society we don't talk about in general.
Right.
How many jobs have you had? Do you know what the guy sitting next to you is getting paid?
Right.
You kind of assume.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yep.
We don't ask.
Yep.
We don't talk about money.
Right.
And this makes the whole thing very uncomfortable. We're not comfortable going to owners and saying this costs extra.
Yep.
Or no, I don't really care. I need to get paid. I had a lot of these conversations during the COVID thing. They're like, I'm going to have to take out a second mortgage on my house to pay for the lumber on that job. I'm like, no, you are not selling your house or not skipping your mortgage payment to improve their property.
Yep.
Tell the guys no.
Right.
I can't afford to do it.
Right.
Like
and understand. Yeah. And
you just can't.
When you understand your numbers and you're not, because as a business owner, the first thing you do is you're optimistic. You're not in business if you're not optimistic. We'll figure it out. Well, we'll get, I'm going to get out and sell more. We'll sell a little bit more. We'll be able to. No. You have to I have to make money on every single job, period. These are the margins I need, period. When the customer doesn't pay, walk. Stop. Deal with it in a lawsuit afterwards.
Right. Stop.
Let the courts deal with it, because you will go out of business if you cater to Karen. You will go out of business if Karen, this and that. It's not your client. You have to make money. And I think clients need to understand this. When you beat up a contractor or you take the lowest bid, you're going to have a problem. Because if they do not price the project right, there's going to be a point where they have to walk because they're not making any money.
Right. And not to say these aren't good guys. A lot of them are very talented.
Right.
Their heart is in the right place.
Right.
They don't want to walk.
Right. But they have to pay.
They got to pay their bills.
And
they got to make payroll. If they don't make payroll, those guys are going to show up on Monday.
Exactly.
And that's just a reality of life. They're like, okay, I don't care what you want to do, but I got to make payroll.
This contractor was so much cheaper. We're going to go with him. This happens all the time.
Right.
Go with the most expensive guy. You're going to overpay, but I guarantee you're going to get the job done. It's if people only realize the risk that you take by going with the cheap guy, because you might get lucky. But what happens you don't, and that the cheap guy can't sit down and articulate, hey, I can't feed my family.
Right.
Because that's what this is.
That's what this is.
Nobody here in Connecticut's Toll Brothers.
Right.
Nobody's making millions of dollars.
Right.
If they're eking out a little bit.
I've told people that. I was like, I am not making enough money on this job to go on vacation.
Right. Exactly.
Like this is not like, I'm going to go out and buy a new car kind of a job.
Right.
I'm going to make some money. I'm going to pay my bills.
Right.
And I'm going to go on with life. There's no massive windfalls in here.
And you're calling me at 7:00 at night, bitching and moaning about a nail pop in the drywall.
Right.
Right.
And that's the other reason I believe remodelers deserve to make every dime they can get. This has got to be one of the most difficult businesses. There's tons of ways to make money, and there's tons of businesses out there. This has got to be one of the hardest. I rarely say that out loud because it sounds like, well, yeah, you were in the business. Of course you think it's the most difficult. But I really do.
Right.
We take manufacturing into their home. We're in their kitchen while they're trying to make coffee in there every morning and get the kids off to school. We're living with these people in their project, and we're making their lives miserable while we're trying to do it. It is a challenging, and there's a million things that can go wrong at any given minute. There are so many challenges. Every remodeler deserves to make money.
A million things that could happen. People do not understand. This is not Amazon Prime.
Right.
It's not Amazon Prime. And to add to the production and being in somebody's home, we're also the psychologist between the significant others.
Yep.
And the rest of the family, and somebody's not having a good day, and then, I didn't tell them to do that. I didn't say to do that. And you went ahead and did something, and you didn't get both decision makers in the room.
Yep.
And now you're in the middle of a screaming match. Let's go with the cheapest guy.
Right.
That has no skills in that.
Wrong?
Yeah, what could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Because, if the contractor's making money, I think, they're not going to be stressed out. They can at least kind of alleviate a little bit. But if they're stressed too, then
that stress carries through the entire company.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the leader of your business.
Right.
Whether you think nobody's watching or you're alone in your office and it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you're completely stressed from the time you get up in the morning to the time you hopefully fall asleep, it comes through in everything you do, in the glance, the way you get out of the truck, your smile or lack thereof.
Yeah. It
just emanates out of every pore of your being, all of this stress.
Mm-hmm.
And you try to hide it. It's like, everything's great, but everybody feels it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, what's he all upset about? Like, I wish I could tell you.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what I can't tell you that, I get $20,000 bill sitting on the desk and I have no idea I want to pay for it.
Right.
And that's where having that relationship with money, having that relationship where you can say, these are just facts.
Yeah.
This is what it costs.
Yeah.
I had an architect tell me once, I thought it was a great line. He said, you want to save money in construction? Don't build.
Right.
Construction's expensive.
Yeah.
There really isn't, how do I save money? You change the scope, but there is no saving money in construction.
It's
coming out of somewhere.
I love that. Oh, how can we do the kitchen for cheaper? don't do it.
Don't do it.
I love it. I
Right.
love it. Just don't do it.
Right.
Because if you try to go do it cheap, you're going to hate it. You're going to find some contractor to do it for the cheap. It's going to be a miserable time. Just don't do it.
Right.
Save up your money and do it right
Do it
with
when
the
you're
right
ready.
contractor. Yeah.
Right.
And make sure they're making money. Make sure the contractor's making money, because if they don't make money, they have to start the next job. They got to focus on the next job that does make money. They have to then say, okay, well, because we're not making enough money, I got to bring in the B team because the drywall went up, and now instead of my A team that comes in to do drywall, I got to do my B team. The work comes out. People don't understand that there's a direct compensation for the actual quality of work.
Right.
Like if you're the cheaper guy is just not as good. It's
Right.
not like if especially when
I
it
had
comes.
B team.
Yeah.
I had A, B, C teams on everything.
Right.
And I've worked with other builders. I mean, they literally had charts in the office.
Right.
List of all the subcontractors and where their ranking was.
Right.
And sometimes a C player is the guy you need.
Yeah, you got to get something done, and
You're slapping a little tile in a powder room down in the basement.
Yeah. And the homeowner's
go
not
ahead.
living there. It's a second or third home. We've got a bigger schedule on it. It's fine, but there's always a cost to that, and the cost is usually time. And there's a time frame where maybe you have to go and fix some stuff. But you're right. There is plays. But if you're going for a remodel and it's in your home and you're in a time frame, don't go. Don't no. There should be no C players. There should be no B players.
Right.
If you want an A player remodel, you got to pay for it. Don't force a C player to be an A. It will never happen.
They're not there
It'll
yet.
never happen. Everybody's gonna be stressed out. So the profit. So what do you the guys that aren't sophisticated yet, and I say that, or they're staying where they're at. They're not using any software. And I would recommend that. Software is like really good. We use Builder Trend. It's one of the bigger ones. What should they just start out with? How would they estimate a job? Well, maybe let's just go through that. What should they, let's break down $100,000 kitchen. What would, how would that look?
Well, estimating the job, I mean, this is where everything in your business starts talking to one another. I mean,
Right.
Estimating the job is obviously the first step we do.
Yeah.
And yet, you may not get that job. This may never enter into your accounting. You may never track anything. So, how you do your estimate, that's going to vary in a lot of respects. Most guys have an Excel spreadsheet they'll start out with. There's a lot of estimating software out there.
Yep.
One of the biggest challenges I found in the estimating software world is updating the costs.
Right.
I used a product called Home Tech,
Mhm.
Home Tech, I think it
Yeah.
was. And I got a what they call the LAMI, a local area modifier index. Updated my local cost. Was it correct? No.
Right.
But I didn't have to call the lumberyard and go, okay, what are 2x4s running this week?
Yeah.
And what difference does it make what a 2x4 is running this week? Because you're not going to buy the 2x4s for 3 months.
Right.
So it's all
It fluctuates a little bit by a couple cents here and there.
Yeah.
At least you need a ballpark. But
So the LAMI indicator got me close enough that like anything, I learned to trust it, and I knew HVAC was always high. We're using the estimating program. Plumbing was always low.
Yep.
And the 2 hours balanced each other out.
Yep.
So, but if I had a job that had a lot of HVAC and no plumbing, I knew I was going to have to pay attention.
Yeah.
Something was about to happen.
Right.
But I kind of knew where the problems were because I used it enough. But like I said, there's a lot of estimating programs out there. A lot of guys stick with Excel spreadsheets.
Yep.
Mainly because getting updated costs is like you need one whole person that does that.
Right.
Especially in remodeling. It's one thing, if you're a tradesman.
Mhm.
There's still 1,000 parts as a plumber.
Right.
1,000 parts as an electrician.
Yeah.
And a couple million parts as a remodeler.
Right.
Are you going to know the pricing of every type of roof shingle?
Right.
No. Every piece of underlayment, every thickness of plywood, it's the siding.
Right.
It's just endless, the number of numbers and pricing you need. So I say, get something you're comfortable with and learn it and run with it.
Right.
And you'll learn where the problems are. You'll learn where you need to tweak. You'll get better, and faster.
Yep. And double check at the end of the job. What happened? Where did it end up? Square footage pricing can be really helpful to be able to break things down, to make sure where you should be. And we actually have a couple of just pricing books, and we just got the new one for 2024. And what it is, and thank God we have Tony, our GM, who is just doing pricing along with a lot of other things, but he is keeping track of that, because I think what you need to do is figure out kind of what the cost is going to be, put in allowances for everything you don't know,
right,
and then when you have the cost, so say if you have the cost, that $100,000 kitchen, the cost should be around 50, and then you have your markup for your overhead, and in your overhead is going to be the cost of everything, including your salary. If you're the business owner, you need your salary in the overhead. The overhead. And I target that again for the guys who are starting out. They don't know the numbers. They don't know what to well, what should I make? I say 10% of your total sales should be your salary,
just to give you a starting point. Now, what you're going to figure out right off the bat is your first year you're going to do $300,000, and you're going to figure out you can't live on $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's why you're still wearing the tool belt.
Right.
You're growing this business, and yes, the first 5 years are going to be painful.
Right.
But so when I say 20% general conditions, half of that is your salary.
Right.
Now, this is where early books get messy because you're out in the field all day long. You're also cost of goods sold.
Right.
But price the work as to where you're going, as if all of this existed.
Yep.
Because you're going to need it. You're going to hire a project manager, or you're going to have to force your way out of the field because you're just running out of hours.
Yeah.
Like I can't make it to the jobs anymore. I got so many estimates to do. I've got so many sales calls to go on. And I mean, don't we all pray to have that problem? Yeah. But it's going to happen.
But now in this markup, you have to also have the time that you go on the sales calls. Listen, guys, you can't make $30,000 and work for 90 hours a week.
Right.
It's not, you're not sustainable. Something's going to give. So when you're thinking about your markup, and everybody has something different for a markup, and it's based off of what is your cost outside of the job costs. You have to think about all of what was my marketing. I went and looked at all of these jobs, and you shouldn't be giving free estimates. That's a whole other podcast.
It's a whole other podcast.
But all of that time has to be calculated in that you're marking up the next job with that cost so that you can live. And I think those are probably the one where the biggest mistakes that I made was all the ancillary costs that I was calculating. Okay, this is what it's going to take to get this job produced. But those guys that were, and at the time it was in-house carpenters. Well, that in-house carpenter is because they're on the payroll. We have to cover workman's comp. That just went up 5%, which, when you're running a lot of guys, that's not $5,000. That just went up $50,000. And now where does that come from? Well, you just priced all these jobs without that extra $50,000. They have to, if you're hiring employees, there's certain benefit packages that you need to offer.
Right.
And that's time off. So where's that calculation in it? What is the downtime when they're sick? What is the downtime when their car gets a flat tire? What is the downtime of their mistakes? What is the downtime of going to Home Depot to buy materials that should have been ordered in the very beginning?
Or the one sheet of drywall.
Exactly.
I'm like, order one extra sheet of drywall.
Yeah.
Because if you get to the end of the drywall hanging and you're one sheet short, that is going to be the most expensive piece of drywall you have ever purchased in your entire life.
It's a $400 piece of drywall.
It's
because you just had somebody that probably your overall cost is $75 to $100 an hour, because when you're paying them $30 or $35, you have all the vehicle cost is another $10 an hour, the gas, the 401k, the insurance, all that stuff. And they went and had to go to Home Depot. It took them 40 minutes. They went, they grabbed the snack. They went, they sat in the truck for a minute, you know, and now they came back. Oh, by the way, they went and they left the helper there. The helper didn't know what to do. So the helper sat at the job site for the 3 hours. And it was just like, I wonder when John's going to come back. And we're billing them at $50 an hour. So you're missing and I think you said it in the beginning before we turned the mics on, that the production is actually 68% of what you estimate.
Right. No, and we all know how long it takes to do stuff.
Right.
You know, I could probably figure out, okay, it's going to take me, 3 hours to cut the hardware in on a door.
Right.
It's probably going to be an all-day job.
Right. Price
By the time I set up my sawhorses, I get the old door out of there. I can put up a little temporary protection so I'm not chasing the dogs around all day long as they keep running out of the door that's missing. All this stuff is happening. Mm-hmm. There is no line item in our estimate for put up temporary protection to make sure dogs stay in the house.
Right.
We don't have that line item in there.
Right.
But we got to do it.
Right.
Or we got to shoo the cat out of the wall before we put up the last piece of drywall because they like to hide in the walls.
Yeah.
Like, really? Where was that in my estimate?
Yeah.
All of this stuff is happening, and it all costs money. I mean, one of the lines, I used it in the beginning, and it's probably the worst line out there. Oh, well, this is a cost of doing business. Mm. What does that mean? Nothing is free.
Right.
There is no magical cost of doing business bucket.
Right.
The owners have to pay for everything.
Right.
There is no magic bucket.
Right.
It's not coming out of anywhere. Nobody magically sneaks in and fills it up for us. Mm-hmm. It's an expense.
Yeah.
Everything is an expense.
And you have to mark up your projects for that cost of doing business bucket. And hopefully 5-6 years down the road, you've actually calculated and said cost of doing business is actually 3%.
Right.
And you add that up. Now, you're going to, where we're at and where we think everybody should be at and where a lot of the companies that we're working with, 100% markup. If it's going to cost you 50, you're going to charge 100 every single time, because that's really the true cost at a company that's operating, that will stay in business. And it's easy. Listen, my plumber was $4,000. We're charging $8,000, because at the end of the day, you have to deal with all of the things around that. Your insurance is going to be notified when that plumber flooded the house. Of course, the plumber insurance too.
Right.
But don't think they're not coming after the general contractor.
Right.
Don't think that customer is going to call you first when something's the problem. Don't think when, the fixtures, something happened with the fixtures, you're not a part of that. Don't think that, your marketing cost to get that job was free for the plumber. The plumber was able to, he's just your guy. He showed up to do the work.
Right.
So you have to mark up everybody to compensate for what you're doing. And if you don't feel comfortable with doing that, you will not have a good time. Right. You're not going to have a good time.
No, it's going to be
stressful. If you can't say, hey, we're good, and the thing is you cannot be the best unless you charge for the best. You cannot be the best unless you are charging so that you can hire the right people. I'll tell you, I learned this yesterday. Just yesterday. I think it was this morning. Get rid of the people that aren't performing. Because if they don't perform, you cannot give customers the experience that they're paying for. And if you don't charge for that, you can't hire for that. We've had subcontractors that we're like, well, they're cheap.
Right. So I save a lot of money. I can buy a lot of aspirin for the amount of money I'm saving.
Exactly. And they show up to the job site and they get work done. No. The client hates it. The client's, freaking out because the work's not done. And the reality is you didn't charge the client enough. So now the clients, do you think that they care that you charged less? They're pissed off the job isn't done.
Right.
They would have been much happier to spend another $20,000 or $30,000 on the projects, and it would be done in 3 weeks, and there would have been no problems, than you giving them a discount. You're the bad guy by not getting the job done, and you didn't make any money.
And then you bring up the other challenging point in all of this. One, if the guy's charging 20%, you tell him he's marking up 100%.
Right.
Like that concept probably is going to take 2 to 3 years to really connect.
You have to own it. You have to change internally who you are.
It is a huge. I can remember to this day. Dave Luperger, who I have known since the 80s, with my first business, he was doing coaching consulting. He still is. Great guy, great programs. He said you need to put 100% markup on change orders.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's disrupting your entire
and I was
production.
just like, no. There's just, you're nuts, you're crazy.
120%.
No, right, right. But when I first heard that,
yeah,
I could not wrap my head around it. I literally couldn't. I can't do that.
Right.
I mentally wasn't prepared that, one, have that conversation with a client, but to first have that conversation with myself and understand it. And that's why understanding your numbers is so important, because if you understand your numbers, having that conversation with yourself gets much easier. And your confidence in front of the clients gets much better. If you feel like you're ripping them off, then you also might feel more.
They're gonna feel that.
They're gonna feel it, and you're gonna be inclined to negotiate a little bit more than you should, because you don't understand your number. Well, how did I get here? I made it up. Well, if I made up that number, I can make up another number. Watch the next number I'm going to make up is $10,000 less.
Right.
Why?
Right.
Because I'm just making up numbers. Right. I don't know my cost. I didn't do a good estimate.
Yep.
Or the other one you talked about was allowances on things you don't know.
Right.
Oh, I'm going to be the hero, and I'm going to guess.
Yeah.
And I will put in a number for plumbing fixtures, and I'll own it.
Right. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
They're not your fixtures.
Right.
You don't know the answer to the question.
Right.
Why?
Yeah.
Don't go there.
No. For
you don't have a magic wand.
And I think the biggest thing is customers, stop it. Stop it. If you're trying to get something for free, it's going to bite you, because what's going to happen is they're going to have to cut corners because they're not making money. Like, and not in a bad way. It's just you're going to be second on the list. They're going to have to try to find something that's done cheaper. They're going to try to get the B team in there because you're beating them up for $1,000 or $2,000 because they put it in here and you wanted something nicer. If people only understood how bad that is. I think I love this analogy. I'd love like the open heart surgery. Are you going to negotiate with the doctor?
Right.
Just be like, can we get that a little cheaper?
Right,
as it's open, you're like, can we get a little cheaper heart?
Right.
You're like,
right.
What? Are you out of your mind?
Do we really need one more transfusion?
Yeah.
I think I got enough blood. I'm okay.
Yeah.
We just hustle it up a little bit more. I think we can make it.
Yeah. You told me we only needed 2,
right?
And you want me to pay for 3 now?
I don't think that's happening.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not paying the change order. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll leave the heart open.
We'll do it with 2. We'll see how it works out. Like, how is this going to work out? Well, we all know how it works out.
Yeah. So really, owning it, I think is key. You have to, and then unfortunately though, like when you start off, everything is good. Everything is running good, and if you're doing it all yourself, you do make money, right? But it's the reality is that most people want to take their skill set, and you should, as you grow older, take your skill set. You want to take your skill set and you want to be able to scale it. And you can't scale your skill set and your know-how and all of your expertise unless you bring people in to do the tasks, the cleanup. You can start out maybe with a helper, and then you move on to a carpenter.
Bookkeeper comment. Bring on a bookkeeper,
Yeah.
let them help you do all the invoicing
Right.
and make sure the payroll gets done and the books are reconciled.
Right.
For me, the bookkeeper is a really good way of hiring.
Right. Yeah, that's your first hire.
It's a simple first hire.
Yep.
It's tremendously beneficial.
Yep.
And you can get comfortable with people helping you out do the work. Now, the other thing, you talk about doing it all yourself. Why do a lot of guys do it all themselves? Because they can control the mistakes. I'll say control them.
Right.
The mistakes still happen, but they stay there for an extra 20 minutes at the end of the day and fix the stuff they screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
and there were no mistakes.
Right. And it doesn't really cost them their time.
Right.
But it
they didn't have to write a check.
They didn't have to write a check for it. So, but the big jump is they're saying, well, I made good money this year. How could I double my pricing? And the reality is, if you're doing a really good job and you're running, you have a lot of expertise. Listen, people, we need people in the trades. We have to bring people in the trades.
Yep.
And if you're thinking that jump, I can't charge more. You have to be able to. The industry needs you to scale your skills. And the only way you're going to scale your skills is to be able to hire people. You have to double your pricing so that you can hire people. It's the only way. But to get back, I read I forget who it was, but your first hire should actually be a house cleaner and then a lawnmower if you don't like that stuff.
There you go.
Because you shouldn't go home and have to clean your house. Take that time and work on your business. And because you're the expert in your business, you should not be, scrubbing the toilet. If you have the extra money,
right.
Hire the things out that necessarily you don't have to train for. And then, the next thing is the bookkeeper. If you like mowing your lawn, I mean, I love lawn,
yeah, a lot of guys, I've made the same comment.
It might be your therapy.
That's your therapy.
Yeah.
They're like, I sit on the lawnmower.
Yeah.
Nobody bothers me.
Right.
The noise is loud.
Yeah.
It just drowns out all my thoughts, and I
Right.
just sit there. And there's a cold beer in the cup
Yeah.
holder, and I mow the lawn, and
Yeah.
I needed that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I kind of get that.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. But it is 3 hours out of your life you can't get back.
Yeah. But that's your start, and then you're gonna have to jump. I think it's really talk to someone like yourself if you're thinking to make that jump to get off the tools. I think that's the biggest step. And then there's a couple big jumps after that you really need a lot of help with, and that's when you start getting over, 4 or 5 people
Right.
that you have a direct connection. And we scaled way too big, way too quick, and then we've shrunken down because there's still a lot of stuff you have to figure out. You have to figure out a lot about yourself, but you have to be able to figure out middle management. That's a whole other step that you have to develop. You have to understand, or bring in a consultant like yourself that can say, hey, listen, these are the main things you have to do. But don't feel that you're ripping anybody off, because if you're doing a good product and you have the time and the money to do the little extra stuff, you're actually doing them a favor.
Right.
Because a lot of the guys out there are not doing that. They're going to hire the guy that was $10,000 cheaper. The job's not going to be done as well, or maybe something happens, and that company ends up going out of business. There's no warranty. There's no nothing. There's no callbacks. There's a problem, et cetera, et cetera. You're doing them a favor by charging more and being able to do a good product.
And when the clients who are lowballing the number, they're going, I saved 10 grand. They don't really care if you stay in business.
Right.
They're not thinking about the warranty down the road.
Yeah.
They're thinking about their own pocket.
Right.
And they're going, what's the worst thing that could happen?
Right.
They may or may not find out.
Right.
You may finish the job and close the company.
Right.
Because now you're broke.
Yeah.
You ran out of money.
Yep. And you didn't put stainless steel screws in your exterior, okay? And now all of a sudden, all of those drywall screws that they used, because that's all they had because they were a little bit cheaper, now are all rusting out. They're staining, and now eventually they're going to fail in 10 years.
Right.
But that was good choice. He was a reasonable contractor on Facebook.
Right. And you're right about that too, is the ripple effect is not something that you may see in the first 6 months.
Right.
You're going to see a couple of cracks in some trim, some molding. Yeah. There'll be a appliance that stops working and nobody knows why. There's going to be small things that happen. And there's certain things that you don't find out about the function of a house until people start using it.
Right.
Like I was diligent about getting a completion list done.
Yeah.
Like I turned on every switch. I opened every door. I turned every knob. I turned on all the burners.
Yep.
I made ice. I tried to get it perfect.
Yep.
And people would move in and they'd go, we just found this. And you're like, how did I miss it? Like, really? But there's just something until they live there.
And if you're charging for it, it's easy to come back and do it. You're not stressed. You're not then trying to do it quickly. So because you're like, hey, I've got to get over to this other one. You've billed enough for the project. Listen, guys, everybody, don't, if you've built in a project management allowance for the job and the client takes more time, charge hourly. Just straight up have it in your contract. If there's not, and we are starting to do this, we have not done this enough, is if the project manager has to do additional work that is outside the original scope, it needs to be done hourly. Because if he's not being compensated, the company's not being compensated, you are not covering your overhead.
Right. I mean, you talk about changes and stuff like that. I mean, that's the other thing I say. Nobody wants to nickel and dime.
Right.
You don't want to be that guy.
Right.
But you got to get paid for the work you do.
Exactly.
Dessert's a change order. Doesn't come with the meal.
And if you're making a good amount of money on a project, do not feel bad because it all evens out. The next 5 might be a total disaster, and that little extra profit that you had on the first job is getting swallowed up by everybody else.
Yep.
And at least you're staying in business.
Right.
Because if you don't really work on that, it's nobody's going to have a good time. No one's going to have a good time. And honestly, there's way too many people getting out of this industry, and we've seen it. We've seen a couple guys in the trades come in, young kids, hot and heavy, love it, loving life, making good money. Next thing we call, we're going after their insurance because they closed up because they couldn't handle the customer side of things, right, and the money side. We don't want to create that in the industry that no one wants to stay in. I mean, the older guys are like, either they only work for a certain type of client that are direct referrals. People are like, oh, they never call me back. They're not calling you back on purpose, Karen, because you sound crazy and they don't want to deal with it.
Right.
It's that simple. Because they call us back if they like working with us. They're, hey, what do you need?
Right.
And then the other person they've been calling for months. So I think the industry needs a big change. I think we need to license the crap out of it in Connecticut. We are so far behind from New York and Massachusetts, and we need to elevate this, and we need to get these, when you go out to these different other states, it's like a legit, it's not, plumber and electrician in Connecticut are good, but we need to elevate it. And people need to be paid. You need to be paid like an accountant or a doctor or anybody professional that has a business.
Right. I mean, you're running a business. And it's not just you running a business. Yeah, it's your business. But your spouse is in this with you. I was going to say wife, because most of us, it's men doing this. I'm trying to be politically correct here, but your spouse is in this with you. Your kids are in this with you. The mortgage is in this with you. The dog is in this with you. Everybody who shows up to work every day is in this with you. They are counting on you to run a good business, make a profit, stay in business, give them a bonus at Christmas time, and a raise every year. They're counting on you. This isn't just about you. You brought a whole team of people along with you on this venture of yours. Right. Yeah, they can go find another job. Yeah, you can go sell a house, buy a new house. But if it goes under, you're taking everybody with you.
Right. And for people that work, you want to set the vision and have everybody take a ride that wins. So you're not going to win if you don't build profit in there. So at the end of the year, say, hey, we made some extra money. Hey, everybody gets a little bit at bonus. Hey, you know what? Honestly, I don't have to lay you off as we go down into the I'll keep you on. You can sweep.
February's going to be a little slow while you stay at home for a couple of weeks.
Exactly. Or we'll sweep the floors. Keep you going. Hey, just come into the that's why you want to have the company be successful. You want a winning team. Also, then you can get the company swag, new vehicles, all of that stuff. That's where profit goes. People, I think that, if anybody takes out this, profit is for growth. If you want to grow the company, it costs a ton of money to grow the company. And you should be taking, hey, I made an extra $500,000 this year. That money, if you want to take your company up to the next level, all of that profit does not go into the owners. Never does. If you look at any business owner, they take their money and they roll it all back into the company and say, okay, we're shooting for a $10 million gross. And I need a new building. I need 10 more employees. And guys, if you're not understanding the cost of an employee for the first 3 to 6 to a year, they are not producing. They're not making you money.
No.
They are going to cost you money. So if you don't have the profits from all of your jobs to be able to say, okay, I'm going to sit down and invest in you. People don't understand when they come to work for you. That the company owners are investing in the employee, and you hope that it pans out and that you get a return.
Right. And you need a return. I mean,
and they have to take
it sounds crass from a business.
Yeah.
You know, people are like, you know, well, they're people. They got families. You need to take care of them.
Right.
Trust me, we all want to do that.
100%.
But they got to be making money for it.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly. And
it doesn't work.
Right.
If they're costing me money.
Right.
That means I'm not paying my mortgage.
Right.
So they can.
Right.
And which makes no sense.
Right.
They have to be profitable.
Exactly. And so you invest your profits in them in the beginning so that at the end the profits can come back out and go into the next portion of the business. So that might be the next, hey, we need a couple $100,000 to then go after a new marketing campaign. Listen, guys, if it's a whole other website, marketing is a black hole that you will lose hundreds of thousands of dollars so quickly that you will turn around and say, what just happened? And I got one lead, you know,
Right.
And it was terrible, and it was a terrible client, and we should have never done it. You need the money to lose too. That's the other.
That
thing.
is a really good point.
Yeah.
And you are going to make a ton of mistakes. And the bigger you get, the more costly those mistakes are.
Yeah. You make a decision when you have employees and you go in the wrong direction. All of a sudden, you have a bunch of people rowing in the wrong direction.
In the wrong direction.
And the ship is going actually much faster than if it was just you by yourself.
Right.
And now it's going in the wrong direction. So you have to. And listen, you can't be afraid of that either. But you have to have the money to be able to say, okay, wrong direction, guys. We're going this way.
Yep.
You know, and
sorry about
right,
that, everybody. You know, guys on the left, you got to pull a little harder.
Yeah.
We got to turn this ship.
We're going back. We
Right.
got to go back.
But you got to have the money to do that.
Exactly.
It's,
Exactly.
You know, the other part of it is, you know, I talked about the 10% of total sales.
Right.
And where does the profit go?
Right.
Well, if you go from $100,000 or $1 million in sales to $2 million in sales, you also just doubled your 10% salary.
Right. Right. Yes.
So that's where your increase comes in. Now you're going to $3 million.
Right.
Now you're making $300,000 a year.
Right.
And you've got reserves, and you sleep at night.
Yeah.
Because the business is making a profit.
Yep.
You can cover the downtimes.
Right.
And some of those downtimes, if you don't think it's going to happen to you, you're wrong. You will be in a dispute.
100%.
Now, you may not end up in court.
Right.
But agreeing to not take the final payment from that client for $10,000 is the same thing as going to court.
Yeah.
You just lost.
Yeah. Go to court. Go to court and be confident that if you think you're doing the right thing, people will take advantage. You use the court system to get your money. Lien the property.
Yep.
If you've done the right thing and people are not being reasonable, lien it. This is you're in business, and you know your attorney is just another tool in your tool chest, and that needs to be used. You
Right.
can't, you think of once you get a certain level of employees, there's a reason why you have a chief legal counsel. Every big company has an attorney on staff. Just for this. So don't think
they have their own office right there.
And they might have a whole team.
Right.
Just to sue people and deal with things in court. So don't think that as you grow that your attorney is only used. It should be part of your team. And there's a lot of attorneys out there that will do part-time legal counsel.
But you're going to have a legal expense. You are going to be. I mean, you're talking about the big companies. I'm working with a large company here in Connecticut. It has nothing to do with any dispute, but there are certain times of the year I can't get a hold of the owner of the company,
right? Because
he's in a massive arbitration case.
Yeah,
that has now been going on for 2 years.
Right.
That's 2 years. Now he's confident he's going to win.
Right.
But in the meantime, he doesn't have his money, and he's paying attorneys.
And where did that money come from? For the attorneys, for his time. Where did that money, if you're not marking up your projects to put in an allowance, I mean, maybe, when you're small, maybe it's only, 0.5% or 1%. You need that 1%. So what happens? Oh, I got 10% profit. Well, you forgot that 1% is going to be that, for attorneys. 2%, you got, maybe you're moving your accounting software, or, a new account. Oh, by the way, guys, the more money you make, the more money the insurance company makes, the more everybody makes more money when you grow the company. Because, what guys are, I got a general liability insurance policy. Well, once you step up to the next level, they want a percentage of your sales. It's not $600. It could be $60,000, and you don't realize that, but you're like, I made all this money. Then you have an insurance audit, and they're like, by the way, we're going to drop you, or you're going to pay.
Right.
So that 10% just goes down to -5 very quickly if you don't know all of your costs. All of your costs. You should have, if you're starting out, a spreadsheet, all of the main cost of your business, and then honestly, I don't know, add 20%. You forgot 20%. You forgot like all of the ancillary things that when you are doing anything in your business, it is costing money. Even if it's just you and it's your time, it's costing. Because there's opportunity costs. Go work for somebody that you're paid hourly. You're going to make more money in the beginning.
Oh, I've said that for most builders,
right,
for the number of hours they're putting in,
yeah,
they would be better off getting a job, working for another remodeler who's successful.
Yep.
And then if they need more money, get a second job
right.
at Home Depot if they want to work till 10, 11 o'clock at night until closing.
Right. And you'll make probably more money.
Probably make more money and have 75% less stress.
Yeah.
Like
100% less stress.
Right. Unless you're going to make money at this thing, unless you're going to be successful, the amount of stress, the number of hours that you're going to go through it's not worth it. Yeah. Go get 2 jobs.
Yeah.
Life can be much easier with 2 jobs.
Right.
It's not fun, but you're still working.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to start your own business and work 16, 18 hours a day. What's the difference?
Yeah.
Oh, the difference is half of those hours you're not getting paid for.
Right. I think, here's a good one. If you would have to pay an employee as an hourly wage for anything that you're doing, and that's pretty much, then you should be billing the customer or should be billing into overhead. I think that's a good rule of thumb. Would you be able to tell somebody to do what you're doing for free? I don't think much anything.
That's my argument. That's one of my first arguments. I'll touch back on it, but the free estimate.
Yeah.
The free estimate is unsustainable.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, we're doing the free estimates at 7 o'clock at night, working till midnight, or we start at 9 after the kids go to bed, and we're working for free to produce a free estimate.
Right.
But once we have to start writing a check to a project manager, to a sales team, to an estimator to do this, you will find out real quickly you can't charge enough to cover that spare $100,000 that you need to do free estimates. Mm-hmm. So it's just as a percentage of marketing, if you want to call it a marketing cost, it's way too high. Your acquisition cost per customer, unsustainable.
Right. Well, what do we got for time? What's been the time?
Hour 15.
Oh wow! All right, so let's crank out another 15 minutes. Do an hour and a half.
You gotta stop touching your mic.
Huh?
You gotta stop touching your mic. I'm getting booms.
Okay. All right, so free estimates. I think let's just dive into that one, guys. What happens with a free estimate is exactly what happens with not pricing a job properly. It's in the same exact boat. You go out to the customer, they ask for a free estimate. Now there's 2 categories here. If you are a tradesman in a subcontracting role that you are installing luxury vinyl, you should have a square footage price, and if you want to give a free estimate, by all means.
My rule of thumb is if you can produce a final estimate in a contract while you're standing in the driveway, then free estimate away.
Yeah.
But if you've got to take a set of plans and get back in your truck and say, I'll see you in a couple of weeks,
Right. It should be paid for.
it should be paid for.
Because, and listen, clients, customers, the public, if somebody's giving you a free estimate for a project that's over $10,000 or $15,000, it's not accurate. There's no way the guy has enough time to actually do pricing for it. And, and obviously, unless it's easy, and if it's a one trade thing, maybe. But what's going to happen is it's going to be inaccurate, and you're going to get a change order, or again, he's going to be not making any money. He's going to end up then having to hire somebody that's cheaper to make money. You have to pay for the estimate if you don't have. And even, listen, we get plans across our desk all the time, all the time. And listen, architects are not, they're just like any other contractor. They're good, and then they're not good. And then some of them are terrible. And some of them, like, I could do a drawing better on a napkin. There's no details in them. If they're not speccing out what exact window, what siding, what cabinets, what flooring, what all of the details, what kind of insulation are you speccing here? Is it spray foam? Is it fat?
What are the knobs on the cabinet?
Knobs on the cabinets.
It's-
Listen, we just installed a doorknob in a bathroom, and the doorknob was $165 just for the doorknob. That's the frame. So if you're saying, here's some plans that I spent $2,000 on online, give me an estimate. You can get an estimate. It's $500 a square foot. That's your estimate. Do you want a proposal with the exact cost? Then we need to sit down and we need to go line by line. And you know what? Don't ask for a proposal. Say, hey, listen, I want this scope of work done for $500 or whatever price you have. I can only afford this. What can you do for that? Because you're going to save a ton of time. Okay, well, you can afford luxury vinyl. You can afford hollow core doors. You can afford batt insulation and vinyl siding.
Right.
That's where you are. Don't get, and listen, the industry has to stop giving free estimates, I think, is what everybody needs to team up
And
be like,
it's moving in that direction.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the new guys come in, and what's the first thing they do is they see the back of somebody else's truck that says free estimates. They go,
Yeah.
oh, I got to do the free estimates. Well, that guy was a roofing contractor.
right.
And he's sitting in the driveway, and he knows what, a 30-year asphalt architectural shingle costs.
Right.
He knows his tear-off costs. He knows his install costs.
Yeah.
He'll write you a proposal right there and collect your check, get back in the truck with a $3,000 deposit, and he'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Right. That's fine. That's good. That's
That's
good.
what he
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
And that's, window replacement. A lot of the vinyl window guys can do that.
Right.
They know the cost of vinyl windows. They got a pretty stock number. They know, whatever the number is, $1,000 an opening. Let me walk around the house and cost.
Yep.
Sliding doors are extra.
Yeah.
There, boom,
Yep.
done. You want a free estimate? They can do it.
Right. But
Those are easy.
But you get the free estimate. You don't do any research. You don't sit down and talk with them, and you say, okay, well, this guy's 30,000, this guy's 80,000, and they gave me these free estimates. But did you sit down and talk to them about the differences? And I think a lot of people just look at the bottom number and not say, okay, well, this guy just spec'd you with a recycled vinyl window that the seals are going to go in 10 years. And then this other guy, it was a Marvin, wood, and they just said, well, window.
Right.
It's almost like I see actually a spot in the industry for just consultants, to be honest with you, so that that the client should,
Which is, it's an owner's rep
yeah,
role.
yeah,
But in the scheme of spending money, try convincing a client.
I know they don't want to do it.
They don't want to fork out another $2,000.
Yeah.
In between the architect and the contractor to consult with them on the pricing of their job.
Right.
And then maybe stay on to oversee the construction, because again, the architect is pretty much done in most residential jobs. Once you hit construction, the architect's done.
Right.
It's up to the contractor. And you've built an adversarial relationship between the client and the contractor because this was based on low bid.
Right.
So what you've told the contractor is everything you do is all about money.
Yep.
It's not about the price. It's not about the quality. Yes, I want the top quality, but I told you I'm buying my contractor based on a low bid.
Right.
You sent a message.
Yeah.
Just in the fact that you 3-bid it,
Right.
you sent a
Right.
message, and you said it's all about price.
Right.
You want to hire a good contractor? Interview them.
Yeah.
Sit with them. Talk to them.
Yeah.
Get to know them. They're going to be in your house with your
Right.
dog, your kids. They're going to be living there with you for way too long.
Yep.
Get to know them.
Yeah.
Is this somebody you'd want to talk to every single day for
Right.
the next 6 months or the next year?
And
That's who you want to hire.
And pay them for their expertise to sit down and come up with the best solution for your home. What is the best solution for your family, your home, the long term? Hey, are you going to be there for 25 years? You don't want to do anything twice in that next 25 or 30
Right.
years. You know, what is important to you? Is it, is the functionality, the feel, the finish, do you trying to create something more timeless? Pre-construction design and consulting is what is missing in projects that are probably the $300,000 and below. It's missing there.
Right.
Is missing there. We're missing a pre-construction plan.
Right.
People, it just, well, I'll do it, I'm going to do this kitchen. It's going to be, 80 or 100 grand. And, the weight shaker looks good. And then there's just problem after problem after problem because no one sat down and said, okay, let's analyze this project. Let's figure out what could possibly go wrong. Let's get a working drawings going that spell out what everybody's is responsible for. Let's get 3D renders so that the client is not stopping you halfway through the project and being like, well, I don't like how it looks. I don't like how it looks. We're like, no, like all it would take is a couple $100 in the beginning to pay somebody to actually put together some designs.
Right.
So that you can say in a software that will blink red when you've put things too close to each other. Well, the door swing's going to hit the freaking toilet.
Right.
Well, no one wants to spend that. No one wants to spend, and we're just starting to work with interior designers, and I'm blown away.
Yeah, no, and I get it. People don't want to spend the money. And my analogy on that one, mainly because I've been working on my house lately, is prep is everything.
Yeah.
Like my Memorial Day weekend, the family came in. Brother-in-law is a former painter. Said, I'll come down and help you paint.
Yeah.
We spent Saturday and Sunday of Memorial Day weekend painting.
Mm-hmm.
4 hours each day.
Yep.
It took me 3 weeks of prep.
Right.
Before we could all spend Memorial Day weekend painting.
Yep.
And you know what I did on Memorial Day weekend? I walked around, I put down drop cloths, I helped put up protection tape. I didn't pick up a brush.
Yeah.
Painting's the easy part.
Yep.
And in a lot of respects, it's all about that prep.
Mm-hmm.
You want a good construction project,
right.
You got to invest in the prep up front.
Right.
You got to get the estimate right. You got to get the scope right. You got to hire the right people.
Right.
If you do all of that, construction's the easy part.
Yeah.
We just put it together now.
Yeah. Having the plan, having somebody looking at the plan and saying, hey, I've got this vanity. Okay, the existing plumbing, you want a floating vanity. The existing plumbing doesn't conduce for this. We're going to have to, change it here. Instead of at the time, no one's thought about it. They just went in and did it. You don't have plans that are saying, here's the existing, here's the proposed. This is what is going to entail. And everybody misses the little details. And what happens is that, right, Nick, it's all in the details. All in the details. It's all in the details. It's that's what we try to put that in on all of our videos. What ends up happening is that these things that don't get flushed out end up being 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 10,000, 5,000, 3,000. And then all of a sudden, your $60,000, $80,000 change order because, and I'm talking bigger numbers because just to kind of make it realistic, any good sized project, it's very quick. I feel like 10 years ago, $1,000 is now $10,000. Like it's so expensive that we like think in 10,000 increments. But if it's not pre-planned properly and it's not, the pre-construction is not done right, all of a sudden it's an $60,000 change order at the end because we've missed a little bit here and missed a little bit there and missed a little bit here. And it would have only cost $2,000 to actually maybe just have you paid for the estimate and flushed all that stuff out.
Right.
Or paid for plans, paid for design. You would have saved the 60 because you would have said, okay, you know what? I don't have the 60. I don't want to spend that. What can we do to change the plans?
So hard to sell future pain.
Right. You can't, the other
$60,000. Well, that's ridiculous. That's never going to happen to me. I won't let it happen.
Yeah. The other guy, I mean, he's way cheaper than you, and he's very confident it's going to get done.
Yeah. And he said that we won't have any big changes, so we're good.
Yeah. It's straightforward. It's no problem.
So, yes, selling future pain is so hard to do, but the industry needs to understand everything we do is custom.
Right.
Everything. It's never been done before. It'll never be done again. It'll never be done in the same house, on the same lot, with the same customer, with the same designer, it will never, this is not an assembly line.
Right. And every company is going to do it differently. And some are going to do better than others.
Right.
And the process of it all and the expertise, who's the experts in the room? Like, do they even know? When you go to get a bid and you're looking at a number, do you know if they even know what they're doing?
Right.
And I think so, having plans on small projects, I think it's worth it. I think it's,
But even a good set of plans, like I said, I worked commercial back in my early days.
Yeah.
But we knew, the plans and specs that we got, we were told exactly what the screws were on the toilet partitions.
Yeah.
Like,
you kind of need it though.
But when we bid a job and we did pricing on it, there were no questions. Eventually we'd have 3 or 4 questions.
Yeah.
On a $40 million job, we'd have 3 or 4 questions for the architect.
Yeah.
Everything else was answered. But it was a $3 million set of drawings.
Right.
Nobody is going to spend the money in a residential project up front what it would cost to produce 100%.
Right.
A 3-bid set of drawings.
Yeah.
Every question answered.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
It
doesn't.
It'd be a $30,000 set of plans.
Right. But
but I can get 3 bids.
Yeah.
Or you could just hire a good builder,
right,
and talk to him about it.
Exactly.
He'll tell you that wall hung sink's going to cost you a lot of money because the plumbing's coming out of the floor, and we're going to have to reroute all the plumbing in the wall. And they're like, you know what?
Right.
Floor mount sink vanity is looking real good right now. We're like, great, settled that one. Moving on.
Yeah. There's a discount over at Home Depot. We'll put that in there.
Right. Just keep an eye out for a sale.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think there's a middle part where, if it doesn't make sense to have the plans, just get somebody that or at least pay somebody for them to at least take the time to think about your project. Pay for the estimate.
Bring the builder in on. If you're going to hire an architect, I love architects. I think if that's the way you want to do it. If the builder doesn't have in-house staff of design staff,
right.
Don't 3-bid the builder. Interview the builder. Bring them on early during the design phase, and pay them to price. Increments.
Yeah.
We're at a 50% design drawings. Run it by the builder.
Right.
He comes back and says, "Okay, you've got a $300,000 job," and you're going, "Well, I was thinking I was going to spend $200,000."
Yeah.
Okay, let's get out the eraser and start figuring this out.
If your architect or designer is not sitting down with you and talking about a budget up front, you're not with the right one. Because a lot of architects and designers are paid by the square footage or paid by the hour. So they're going to make it beautiful, and you're going to fall in love with it. Oh, my God. It's so back and forth, and you're getting all excited, and you're showing your friends, and you're telling your significant other, and your kids are picking out their, the toys that are going in the new, bedroom. Like, everybody is ecstatic. And then you bring your plans. You're all excited, and you bring it to the first builder. And the guy's like, "Oh, it's gonna be like $2 million."
Right.
You're like, "I had 200,000."
Right.
No one had a good time. So then you're like, "Oh my God, that guy's ripping me off." Then you go to the next one, And he's like, yeah, it's going to be like 2.2 million. Oh, I only had 200,000. And you go to the third guy. And then you keep going until you try to find somebody that's somewhat close, and you pick the worst guy because
Right.
you're trying to force it in. Instead, what you need to do is you need to say, I have 200,000. I need plans that are going to be around. And if architect does not have on the pulse of what cost is, hand on the pulse for that.
And they don't.
They don't.
And they
then
don't.
You
I
need to
mean,
go with a design build.
You're pricing stuff every single day.
Yeah.
I have gotten out of the day-to-day pricing anymore
Right.
in the industry. So I don't.
Right.
Even though I'm talking to builders every day, but they tell me pricing of stuff, and I'm like,
Yeah.
when did that happen?
No, I know. I've seen your eyes get a little
Holy
bit big when I
cats,
throw
it's
numbers
stuff-
out there.
Yeah, it. Even though I'm involved in it, even though I still do a lot of handyman stuff around my house.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't do little tiny small projects. I
Right.
get myself involved.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Right.
Architects don't know the pricing of stuff.
Yeah. So the design build company, you're going to go in and you're going to say, hey, listen, these are the things I want done. And this is the budget. And honestly, I know everybody's going to hold back a little bit. That's fine.
Right.
Get a starting point. Don't hold back half, though, because you're just fighting. You're fighting us the entire time. We just had a great interview the other day, and the client came in, had a good set of plans, knew what the cost was going to be, had the budget, was very informed, said, listen, here's the plans. I've got $700,000 to spend. Okay, it's a good budget. What you can't do for that is you can't do this. And we had to say, if you want this addition off the back also, it's going to be an extra $300. That's how it should be. Let's redesign it. But if you don't have the plans, it's better just to come directly to us, because he was excited about the addition, but he was better. He had his expectations were better. Come and say, hey, listen, this is what we have for a budget. What can we do for it? And then we design and we get you excited about what you can do.
Right.
Instead of you just got in that Mercedes and you've got the massaging seats and it goes 0 to million in 1 second, and it's so beautiful and you're so excited, and then it's $150,000 and no one had a good time. You're back down. You had to go drive the Kia.
Right.
What? Don't get in there. Don't
And
get in that nice car.
I get the other thing. I mean, even when I try to price out, so maybe I want to put up a stone wall or a patio. I don't know the pricing of it.
Right.
So if the mason came to me and said, well, what's your budget?
Right.
Well, I don't really have a budget. I don't know. I know I want a sidewalk.
Yeah.
And I've told builders one way to start fleshing that out is said, okay, so if I said the sidewalk was going to cost you $20,000,
right,
how would you respond?
Yeah.
And it'd be like, I was thinking half that.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Right.
Now we've got a budget.
Yeah. And that's where the free estimates come in.
And if they shrug their shoulders and go, if it costs 20, it costs. Okay, now we have a budget.
Right. Right.
And if their eyes light up, going only $20,000.
Right. Then it might be, hey, you know what? Pavers are nice, but if you're willing to spend a little bit of money, we would recommend to do a bluestone, because it's beautiful, it's timeless,
Right.
And it's double the price, so you're going to spend $40, but it's a nicer walk.
And if they don't want that,
If
that's
they don't want
fine
it,
too.
then you do pavers. But
Right.
you don't, you
But
work
that's
it
how I
around.
kind of help
Yeah.
people get into alignment on
Right.
a budget.
Right. And that's what we do too.
You can back. Clients don't listen for the second to the builders. You can back clients into that corner too.
Right.
If they're like, well, I really don't want to tell you what my number is.
Right.
Well, I get that.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at your plans here. We've had a little conversation
Yeah.
for a half an hour. If I said this was going to be $500,000, how would you react?
Yeah.
Just be honest with them and throw it on the table.
Yeah.
Their reaction is going to give you most likely the answer you're looking for. Well, I was thinking half that.
Yeah. All right. Nice to see you.
Go.
It's nice to meet you. And we do the exact same things, because we'll go in, and I love the conversation, because the budget conversation is always awkward, and I'm comfortable in awkward situations. But you sit down and, what's the budget? Oh, I don't have a budget. Okay, well, we're going to show you our cards first. What you're saying, a rough ballpark is going to be this cost. Oh, okay. Then you say, and then you go back and forth. Okay, we can really spend this. Okay, now let's get into the details, and we'll design it around.
Right.
Design it around that budget. So, if you are,
That's the key element.
yeah.
Design to the budget.
Right.
You know, yeah, I wanted the Onyx backsplash in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Guess what? You can't afford it this year.
Yeah. We're not going to import the tile from Italy that they handmade. It's not there. You're going to Tile America.
Right.
Yeah.
Or we're painting the backsplash this
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
You get the tile next year.
Right. So I think, and then that's the thing. You have to stop distrusting, there's a bad rap for builders because and remodelers because they didn't charge enough, and now they're doing desperate things.
Right.
They're not calling you back because how do they call you back? They've already lost so much money on the job. They have to go make money somewhere else, so they're not going to call you back. They can't come in back and warranty. So the industry gets a bad name, but the fix of this is pay everybody more money. That's the fix.
And that goes back to the original conversation of comfortable with money.
Right.
The builders also have to be comfortable to tell the customers this is the way it's done.
Put your big boy pants on. You decided to be a business owner.
Right.
Sit down and say, listen, this is the cost. This is the true cost. Don't open your business and maybe, call you and really sit down and come up with what's the cost going to be. And then know your numbers. Know your numbers. Sit down and say, okay, if it's going to cost me $10,000 to do this job, I need to charge 15 or 20, whatever you come up with it. But you need to have that. The cost is this. My overhead is this. This is what I have to mark it up, and then add the profit.
At which point in your mind is now pretty much break even.
Yeah, right. And that's if everything goes well.
If everything goes perfect.
Everything has to go perfect.
Right.
It never does.
Covered my overhead.
Yeah.
It went perfect.
Yeah.
Paid for all the job costs. There were no increases there.
Right.
Covered all my change orders. The work was done perfectly. There was no warranty callbacks.
Right.
It just was unbelievably great job.
Yeah.
And I made a 10% profit.
Yeah.
Which means you marked up at a minimum 50%.
I think that's the end right there. That's mic drop. Charge more money. I think and clients, if you nickel and dime, you're not going to have a fun time.
And this is
wow, huh, Nick? Nickel and diamond, no fun timing, right? Love it. Okay. Well, Duane, awesome to be on the. I think we just went through probably 2 hours. I think we got to have you back in a couple months. We'll dive into.
Just get on your regular schedule.
Yeah.
I'll just do my quarterly visit.
Yeah, there we go. Real quick, where can everybody find you? And
main place to find me is on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I also have a website at businessblueprintinc.com, but I post twice a day on LinkedIn. 99% of the time it's about construction business. Every now and then it's about some little project I've got going on in the house, which I usually still try to relate it back to something that's going on in the remodeling industry because I'm remodeling. But everything about me is up there. My resume is up there. Referrals are up there. Links to all my videos on YouTube. Everything is there. You can find me there. Check it out. If you want to jump on a quick call, I'd love to learn more about your business.
Awesome. Duane, awesome to see you. Thanks. I appreciate you coming on. And till next time.
Great.